Welcome everybody here at the Venice Center for Digital Public Humanities and at home to our last seminar in our spring and summer series of seminars in digital and public humanities. And today we have Elena Borin here, which I will introduce you shortly. We are recording. Are we recording? Yeah, we are recording, so please be aware that we are recording, and when we then enter the discussion, so that we will publish that on YouTube, if that's fine with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Yeah, so Elena Borin is a full professor. Okay, full professor in business administration for Pegasus Digital University. She's also vice dean for international affairs, director of the Excellence Lab for Sustainable Innovation in Cultural and Creative Industries, Sectors and Ecosystems, as well as the Observatory on Sustainability, Accounting and Reporting Practices in Cultural and Creative Ecosystems. Previously, Elena was associate professor for Link Campus University in Rome. And from 2017 to 2021, she was director of the Master of Sciences in Arts and Cultural Management, and also coordinator for research team in Arts and Cultural Management at the Burgundy School of Business in Dijon in France. She was awarded the title of Doctor Europaeus in 2016 and won several awards for her research on cultural management and policies. She was and is active in numerous international boards and committees. So we have the biographical note, which is long on our website. So very impressive curriculum. And her research interests include sustainable cultural management, governance, and policy with an international comparative approach, funding for cultural and creative sector, public-private partnership, etc., etc. And of course, all topics on which she publishes widely. Now, here and today, Elena will present on the European model, a financial analysis of collaborative digitization in cultural heritage. So at the heart of our interest here at the center. And yeah, we look forward to your presentation now. And anyone from home, please feel free to make comments in the chat, and then we can pick up on this in the following discussion. But now the floor is yours. Thank you very much for coming. And
thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. Pleasure.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today with you and for this interdisciplinary confrontation on the topic that I proposed in this seminar. So I would like to especially thank you for this invitation, because I didn't expect it, because as it was said in the introduction, I'm from a very different field, actually. I am really interested in digital cultural heritage. I'm interested in digital processes. I'm interested in the digital transition in general, but I'm from accounting and from reporting. So it's a completely different field, which anyhow it intersects in my career and in my experience as a professional first, and then as a researcher and academic later. So I think everything was said about my CV. So I'm very talkative, so I'm also, when I write, I'm really writing. I don't know how to say that. But actually, this is just to give you an idea of what my experience is. So my research focuses on cultural management. And I'm particularly interested in sustainability, which is not just sustainability, like environmental, social, economic sustainability, and cultural sustainability, as the cultural and creative sector is campaigning for many years, has been campaigning for many years. But my interest is also in the concept of intersecting these different dimensions of sustainability in a more holistic approach, in a more holistic model that is under discussion also in at the European Commission level and the UNESCO level, etc. For a long time now, I've been focusing on the financial sustainability. So the economic sustainability of this big transition that is impacting the cultural and creative sector and the cultural heritage sector in particular. So today I'm presenting a research that was published first in 2023. Now a second chapter, let's call it like this, is being published, is going to be published soon. And its focus is really on understanding what are the costs of digitization. So I will talk about first a little bit about the theoretical framework. In a very open way, I would like you also to tell me what you think and how do you perceive the way that the different trends that I identified basically in literature, but also in the policy debate. We will go a little bit deeper into the theoretical questions, the theoretical framework, and then in the research question, in order to explain to you how I investigated this topic. So I will talk about the research design methodology and, of course, the results of the analysis. So let's start really from the research idea. So why this research? Actually, it's something that I started during the pandemic period, because in my opinion, the pandemic period was really a game-changing period for all of us. And in terms of digitization, it was really a moment in which there was a change in mindset, in my opinion. And we saw it really in a very disruptive way, in a very sudden way, I will say. And it's something that is identified in literature and described in literature as the digitization imperative. Okay, so basically we were forced to change our paradigm of interaction and focus a little bit more on the idea of the use of digital contents. Digital contents that are, of course, impacting and related to many different fields, but they were particularly visible in the cultural and creative sectors. You probably remember during the pandemic, we couldn't go to the museums, we couldn't go to performing arts performances, we couldn't go to the opera, not even to the cinema. So it was really a moment in which everybody was using digital contents, cultural digital, creative digital contents. And in this period, I think really this digital imperative became very, very strong and became really felt also by the cultural and creative sector. From an economic and financial point of view, it was a big challenge in terms of financial sustainability, because the economic model of the cultural and creative companies, which was based, of course, on the interaction with the audience, basically was disrupted. So they needed to find other ways to interact with the audience, which were mainly through digital contents. That implied a digitization of many contents, the creation of digital contents, and as far as our topic is concerned, also a deep reflection on what we have to do in terms of digitizing the cultural heritage in order to make it available, in order also to preserve it, in order to make it really also useful and available for the majority of the public. So this digitization imperative, therefore, became really, really strong during the COVID-19. It impacted, it started, of course, long before. We talk about digitizing cultural heritage, I think, at the beginning of the 1970s, more or less, 1980s, in the 2000s, of course. But it became particularly evident during this period. So it impacted, of course, it was considered as a mean of accessibility, of physical preservation. It was also particularly, especially before, related to preservation of intangible cultural heritage. And it involved also the digitization of preservation of digitized heritage, but also of digital heritage, so of digital art products and art contents. So everything was becoming digital, and this was also something which became really evident in terms of political strategies and policy strategies for the cultural and creative sector. I put here just some initiatives. I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with them. So we have the EU Digital Strategy, Shaping Europe's Digital Future, which was issued in 2020, which of course is related to this idea of switching to digital for many services and also impacting cultural heritage. The fact that digitization was an imperative is also seen in the Green Deal, which is not specifically on digitization, but it mentioned frequently the importance of digitizing different assets, among which also cultural heritage. It's part of a recovery plan. So this green and digital transition was really the topic of the day, the buzzword of many policy documents. In terms of cultural heritage, it became also a buzzword. So in 2022, we have the Mondial Cult Conference. I think you know what it is. It's a big conference organized by UNESCO with all the ministries of the different countries that are signing, that are members of UNESCO. And in 2022, the Mondial Cult Conference ended with a declaration of the different ministries, which identified six hot themes to be discussed and to be monitored in the following years. So these are the ones that you maybe can read in this slide. These are cultural rights, cultural education, economy of culture, culture and climate action, cultural heritage and crisis, but most of all, digital technologies in the cultural sector. In the Mondial Cult 2022, there are also two focus areas that are AI, so artificial intelligence and culture, and of course, culture for peace. These focus are supposed to be trans-disciplinary, trans-sectoral, covering to be touched in all the 6 themes of discussion. This year, we have the Mondial Cult 2025, so another big challenge, another big conference in relation to culture and cultural heritage. And again, this Mondial Cult 2025 will focus on these themes. Okay, so we will continue debating and integrating this reflection on the digitization, digital technologies, the relations to culture and digital technologies, also in the policy debate. In economic terms, what does it mean for cultural organizations? It means a lot of pressure. Okay, so cultural organizations are, I won't say forced, but at least, strongly encouraged to digitize their collections, to create digital contents, to make them available, and to find new ways, digital ways, to interact with the public. So this digitization imperative basically implies a lot of challenges in terms of management and of governance, in terms of processes, in terms of business model, in terms of really rethinking the way cultural organizations are managed. So some of the challenges of this process of digitization for cultural organizations are of different natures. Some of them are related to the staff. So is our staff ready for this type of contents, for this type of creation of contents? Do we have the technologies? Do we have means, infrastructure, protocols to manage the data, and so on? So there is a lot of thinking also of what is the impact of digitization, not just in technical skills and in technical processes, but really on the business model of cultural organizations. Therefore, digitization is a technical challenge. I think you're probably experts in that. So you're studying also the digital processes, the digital technologies for more or less, for cultural heritage digitization. But it's also a managerial challenge. And this is something that needs to be taken into account also when we think of digitizing cultural heritage. The idea, therefore, at the basis of a literature debate is really that we need to rethink the long-term economic and financial sustainability of the whole processes of digitization and preservation of digital and digitized heritage. So there is not a lot of literature on that because it's a topic which has been considered less interesting for economic and managerial reflection compared to the abundance of literature on digital heritage and digitized heritage. But still, we have some literature identifying the costs, focusing on the different challenges related to the financial sustainability of the digitization processes. So here is a scheme, I don't know if it's readable, which presents the main costs that have been identified in literature related to the digitization processes of cultural heritage and of digitizing artifacts and collections. So these costs are related, of course, the first cost, the more evident cost, is the one related to the digitization equipment and technologies. So we need, of course, tools, physical tools, equipments, technologies that allows us to create a digital twin, I think it's called, to digitize cultural heritage. Then another cost that has been identified in literature is, of course, the one related to the staff, to the personnel. So all these costs related to acquiring these competencies and skills that are necessary for the digitization processes means a process of also of upskilling and reskilling all the staff. And to me, it's an enormous cost. I don't know if you are perceiving this, but it's enormous cost for cultural organization. Then there are all the costs that have been identified in relations to metadata creation, the enrichment of data, the costs related to data storage, the infrastructure to storage all the digitized data, the protocols for preservation and accessibility. This is a very important point because actually all the protocols means managerial reflection, which takes time and requires personalized, specific stuff. Then we have course related to quality control, quality assurance processes to maintain high quality digitized material. We have costs related to the maintenance, the system upgrades, the data migration and technology updates, costs related to accessibility and valorization. Of course, if we have digitized data and we don't use and don't make them accessible, they are basically useless. So we need to find also ways and invest money in making them accessible and in some extent in enhancing this data. And then, of course, the costs related to copyright, licensing, and of course, digital rights management. So imagine you're a big museum, you have all these costs. I think you manage more or less to find the funds, to attract the attention, maybe to carry out a crowdfunding campaign. You find ways to do it. And imagine you're a small museum. Okay, so these costs are enormous. It's almost impossible for a small museum. And remember that in Italy, for example, the majority of museums are small museums. They don't have actually the means to support, to cover all these costs. It's impossible for that. So another problem is that the majority of the European funds are related to some of these costs. So they can find, for example, funds at the local, national, international level, mainly for digitizing the cultural heritage. But all the costs related to the other type of typology of costs are not covered. Okay, so it's basically we have big funds, we digitize our heritage, and then, okay. So it's a very big problem in terms of rethinking the whole business model of the cultural and creative sector. So what are the potential solutions? First thing, you develop all these processes, these resources, you cover all these costs in-house. So you upskill your staff, you digitize your content, you create an digital infrastructure to store them, you create all the activities, you have somebody who is an expert in legal topics to manage all the data, licensing, etc. Of course, it's enormous. Some big museums are doing it, so they can actually afford the whole process. Second option, you outsource. Okay, so you try to outsource some specific activities. For example, the ones related to the digitization, which are actually really a burden for cultural organization, or the one related to the storage of the data, or the one related to the enhancement of the data. You can outsource some of the processes. Of course, this is less expensive, okay? Because you create basically alliances, of course, contractual alliances with other partners who are providing you some services. But what is the big problem with that? First of all, there is a fragmentation of processes, okay? So because it's unlikely that you will collaborate with the same partner for doing all the activities. So it's probably that it's likely that you have different partners for different services. And also in that solution, actually you lose control of the whole process. So it's something which is kind of tricky to some extent. So third solution, partnership. So you create alliances and strategic partnerships to implement activities and to basically generate managerial efficiencies in the whole processes, economies of scale, sharing of knowledge, and innovation. What is the difference? With outsourcing processes, basically you need something and you go to different partners. With strategic partnership, you put over the scheme together, you create a sort of ecosystem of partnerships, and you work toward the same goals all together. So there is a strategy behind it, and it's easier on a managerial term to manage and to develop. Of course, this is a model that I will present to you today. So let's think of it as an ecosystem. Let's try to see what are the solutions that have been developed at the European level in order to implement this perspective. But of course, there are issues that are also present in the different models. First of all, sometimes the first issue is that usually cultural heritage organization, think of the digitization as a standalone moment in their life. I digitize and that's it. Okay, so they don't perceive that there is a continuum of activities to be developed in the very long term. And the second, so these initiatives are usually temporarily limited based on specific projects, based on specific funding, and so hindering the possibility of evolving into structural cooperation. And then the second problem, which is the biggest one, is governance. So how do we manage, how do we structure the interaction between all the partners if we go into a partnership model? So these were big moments of reflections also at the policy level, at the management level, and for the cultural heritage and cultural organizations in general. However, we saw that the European Union, from the very beginning, understood the potential of this model and tried to implement this cooperation managed with a top-down approach, but actually tried to implement this type of processes, this type of approach. And it did it, the European Union did it, by creating a platform which was Europeana, which we all know, I think. I don't know how familiar you are with the platform. Some people are enthusiastic about it, extremely interesting data, really. Some other people are criticizing it for the difficulties, for example, of interaction with the data, for the difficulty, for the interfaces that are not really, user-friendly. Some people also criticize the data, really, that they are not complete, they are not, made for researcher and not appropriate for the different type of audience. I'm not entering into this because I'm not an expert. I think you're better equipped at evaluating this. But from the managerial perspective, what I see here is a platform, like many business platforms, which we can find in any other industries. Therefore, when I decided to study the Europeana case, the first thing I did is, let's look at what other digital platforms are doing and what is the literature on other digital platforms, so that we can learn maybe something from the other digital platforms in order to analyze the Europeana case. So there is a lot of literature in the platform, apart from Europeana. And therefore, I found it interesting to focus on three strands in literature. The first one, the strand on digitization of cultural heritage, because, of course, it's the basis also for the Europeana analysis. But also, I wanted to analyze the literature on digital businesses and digital platforms and global value chain. Global value chains, of course, because we will see it later, Europeana is based on an interaction from different entities in different European countries that create value together. So it's really a value chain, international value chain. So let's focus first on the literature outside the cultural heritage sector, on the literature on digital businesses and global value chain. So the literature on digital businesses and digital platforms, more specifically, is very interesting because it is based on the concept of value creation. So how can we create value through putting together different businesses into a digital platform? And this is interesting because they all speak about, first of all, the role of platform sponsors. So every platform has a sponsor, which means the one who manages, basically promote the project. And they always identified the fact that the platform sponsor is the one who creates the value creation processes. So the one who decides how value is created or co-created with the different members of the platform. So the role of platform sponsor is, of course, very determinant in terms of levels of value co-creation, of the level of open innovation. This is a concept which is deeply analyzed in literature. Open innovation means that you are innovating together, which means you have an inbound innovation process, but also an outbound innovation process. So innovation comes from the different partners and go to the platform, and the platform shares with the other members of the network or whatever of the business, but also outside. It means that it's really, open to the inputs of everyone, also external entities. So the sponsor, therefore the platform sponsors are the one determining this level of interaction of open innovation processes, these co-creation processes, etc. And it's also demonstrated in literature that the digital platforms that work at a more efficient capacity are the ones who are based on multi-directional value co-creation. Okay, so it means that all the different partners of the platform are interacting always in order to improve the processes. So it's not a top-down, it's a bottom-up approach. It's a multi-directional value creation processes. Then this is the literature, therefore, on digital businesses and digital platforms. The key takeaways are: we need to be multi-directional, we need to be open, we need to be basically interactive in the creation of value. The second literature trend that I analyzed is the one of global value chains, which is the one related to stimulating investment in digitization, and the one related to the interaction in the value chain. And the key takeaway here is that usually when there are small companies collaborating with big companies inside a global value chain, the big companies are triggers for upskilling and upgrading in terms of technological innovation. Okay, so basically, it's the big players who stimulate the small players to upgrade in terms of technology, in terms of innovation. And then, of course, I analyzed the literature on the digitization of cultural heritage. And this is something with whom you are already familiar. And it's related to the fact that the digitization processes are in line with the values and mission of the cultural heritage sector, that we need to promote these processes. And it also studies the fact that usually we have different approaches to the digitization of cultural heritage. So there is the European model, who is usually a top-down model. It's the government, it's the big entities in terms of governance, really, of the national, regional, or international level, that decide the approaches. Instead, in the American model, there is a more participatory approach. So it is more, involving also the lower level of society, the levels of small companies. I don't know if you can put it together, if you can see the connections, but basically, let's think of Europeana. You have big museums and small museums. So we can apply the global value chain model, in which the big museums probably are the triggers of upskilling, reskilling, and upgrading of technologies that can be useful also for small museums. Platform sponsors in the digital business and digital platforms. In this case, the sponsors will be, of course, the European Commission, the European Community, the platform Europeana, could be really the one enhancing the co-creation value or hindering the co-creation value. And finally, related to the digitization of cultural heritage, we can decide which approach we want. The American one, the European one, what we want to implement. But anyway, all the literature lead us to focus on two topics: the value of the creation and co-creation of value, and the governance and management system. And this is what I investigated basically in my research. So therefore, of course, I decided to focus on Europeana, because Europeana is the flagship initiative, the leading model of digital platforms for cultural heritage at the European level. I don't know if you know a little bit the history, but it's a project which started in 2008, 2009. It was part of a digital agenda for Europe. There was a first attempt, which was the e-Content Plus program, which launched effectively the Europeana initiative. There was a first moment in which they were still designing the model. But after this first period, the idea is that we need to develop protocols and standards, tool technologies for managing the collaboration and for enhancing the whole project. The Europeana is a project, it's still working, but actually attracted a lot of attention. There are a lot of the majority of cultural organizations, not the majority, but a big part of cultural organization, cultural heritage organization in Europe adhere to the project. Here are some names of big galleries, but of course there are also other type of organization. And it is a project that also attracted a lot of attention in terms of data digitization protocols, data management. However, we noticed that there is still a lack in the literature related to the business model of the Europeana platform. Therefore, I was really interested from a managerial point of view to understand why a cultural organization should adhere to Europeana. So what are the benefits of joining this project? Because it's a voluntary, it's not, so we decide voluntarily to adhere. So what are the benefits of joining an international digital platform like Europeana from a cost reduction and managerial perspective? And what lessons can we learn from the project that can guide our long-term economically sustainable management in the digital preservation of contemporary or any type of cultural heritage? So I decided to investigate this project according to a qualitative approach, in particular to the case study approach protocol developed by Yin. We have a two-stage of analysis, a preliminary analysis on secondary data and an empirical phase on primary data. And the preliminary analysis included the analysis of secondary sources like annual reports, partnership agreements, project documents, of course, the website, the status, the press releases, etc. And also the call for tenders, because Europeana is financed by a call for tender every 2 years. And then that led to an analysis which set the basis for the empirical phase, in which I carried out semi-structured interviews with representatives of 3 main categories of stakeholders involved in the Europeana initiative. So the Europeana Foundation, of course, which is the managing entity, the aggregators, and then the cultural organizations that are the content creator, the content providers for the Europeana platform. I carried out a manual coding according to the Joya methodology. So I don't know if you're familiar with this methodology. Basically, you start from the verbatim, then you create a first level of abstraction, and you arrive at a concept that expresses the type of data that you were analyzing. So in the preliminary phase, I analyzed the management model, therefore, of the Europeana platform. In terms of management, I realized that there are 3 levels of management. A first level, which is the one inside the cultural organizations. So these are the ones who are holding the data, the owner of the data, the content providers. Then there is a second, an upper level, which is the level of the aggregators. And then there is the top level, which is the one of the Europeana Foundation. So the level of the cultural organizations, of course, these are the organizations that are the one having the cultural collections, the artifacts, etc. There are around 3,700 cultural organizations which adhere to the project in Europe. They basically sign cooperation agreements with the over levels of the management, so with aggregators and with the Europeana Foundation. And they are in charge of digitizing the cultural heritage according to specific protocols that are established by the Europeana Foundation. So they digitize, they are the one digitizing the contents, and then they pass it to the aggregators. The aggregators are entities which have a geographical or thematic nature. So for example, there are aggregators for Italy or Ireland, etc. And then there are aggregators related to, for example, the film, the Jewish heritage, whatever. So we have 44 aggregators currently in the Europeana project. they basically gather the data. They gather the data according to the formats that are established by the Europeana Foundation. They control the data, they prepare the data, they enrich the data with metadata. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, but so they enrich basically the basic data, and they make it available in a format which is compatible with the Europeana platform. And then the aggregator pass all the data to the Europeana Foundation. Europeana Foundation is the one which is not only defining the protocols, the formats, and the procedures, basically, but is also the entity who is responsible for the Europeana platform and for a series of activities related to activities to support research, to outreach activities, to edutainment activities, basically to making this data stored and accessible to all the public and the audience that can be potentially interesting. So the management of processes between the three actors is mainly online, of course, because we are dislocated into different types of geographical contents, but they have common repositories, of course, and they have softwares that facilitates all the management processes. They never meet apart from some period, specific period during the year for the governance bodies meetings. In terms of governance, the Europeana is based on three pillars. The Europeana Foundation, which is a non-profit organization. It's funded by the European Union through a call for tenders every 2 years. And it's based in the Netherlands. Then there is the European Aggregators Forum, which is the forum aggregating all the aggregators. So putting together all the aggregators in order to discuss and decide also the strategic directions. And then there is the European Network Association, which is, in the original idea, the association of all the users. Basically now, the members of the European Network Association are cultural professionals. So the same one working in the museums that are providing contents or related to that museums. So this is a little bit the scheme in relations to what is the governance and the management model. So this laid the foundation for the interviews, of course, so the empirical part of the research, which aim to understand why really these organizations are adhering to Europeana, provided that, given that they have to digitize their heritage themselves. So it's an enormous cost for them. It's a voluntary cost because we are not obliged to. So they decide to put an extra effort in that. So as I said, I use the Gioia methodology. So you have a first order concept, second order themes, and aggregate dimensions. And I identified three main aggregate dimensions. Here you can find the first one. So basically, it says that the Europeana project does not directly decrease the cost of digitization of cultural heritage organization. So the idea, my initial idea before knowing the project, of why a cultural organization should adhere to this project was, probably they are helping the cultural organization digitizing, but they are not. So the costs related to the digitization of the cultural collections are non-existent. Even there is additional costs because the protocols are really strict, they explained to me. So basically when they digitize, it's not a normal digitization, it's really requiring a lot of costs and efforts. So basically there is no impact on reducing the cost of digitizing artworks. The second aggregate dimensions instead said that basically the Europeana project has a positive impact on the costs related to the digitized data quality, to the management, and of course to the enhancement. Which means that basically there is a reduction of costs, not the costs that I was thinking, but the costs that are related to the digitization process. And then the third aggregate dimension, in my opinion, is the more interesting, because it really gives us the pulse of what the cultural organization think of the Europeana. So Europeana for them is not an opportunity to reduce costs, but it's basically a sort of mission of making their cultural heritage available to everyone. Okay, so they are aware that through Europeana, there is really an added value related to the contribution of the outreach potential of the cultural heritage of their collections. So reducing the cost is basically not the objective of entry into the Europeana project. Here, I didn't put it here, but here also emerged some of the critical points of the whole process, because they said that basically Europeana, in their opinion, was something that they were adhering to, not just to provide data for researchers, but also to provide data for the audience, for the public. And basically, all the cultural organizations were saying that this objective was not reached, that they were really unsatisfied because the data were not user-friendly. They couldn't access themselves, their staff couldn't access the data. So there were a lot of criticalities. And the second point that emerged here is that basically this open innovation process that I was mentioning as a virtuous, as a best practice in the digital platforms in general, is not implemented here. So basically, there is no way from the bottom to the top to communicate in order to enhance the processes of digitization, of opening up and improving the whole process. Okay, so this was really interesting in terms of feedback from the cultural organizations in particular. But anyway, coming back to what we discussed at the beginning. So this is the same schemes, and this is the cost that we identified before. So what is the direct and indirect impact of participating in Europeana? So as you can see, the first cost, which is the red one, okay, which is related to the digitization, equipment and technology, so basically the real moment of digitizing the heritage, is really not impacted in terms of reduction of costs. It is, the Europeana is instead impacting a little bit in the qualified, in the skilling on reskilling of personnel, not in the fact that it is, how to say, providing funds for skilling or reskilling, but by the fact that the confrontation, the interaction with the aggregators helped the personnel of a cultural organization to upskill and reskill their competencies. But then the impact was related to all the other costs, because the copyright, licensing, etc., was managed by Europeana. The metadata creation was, helped by the aggregators. The data storage infrastructure were provided by Europeana. The quality control was done by aggregators. So all these costs are the ones that are basically reduced, if not, of course, deleted, because still they are there from the cultural organizations. But they are, to some extent, reduced by entering in the project of Europeana. So therefore, Europeana was something which is overall interesting and which really benefits the cultural heritage organizations involved. But the cost reduction, of course, it's not the only reason to participate in initiative, and still there are drawbacks and problems in the whole process. Actually, what I think it's interesting is that what emerges from this research and what emerges also from the dialogue with the different cultural organizations is probably being tackled by the European Commission by launching new initiatives that aim at making the Europeana project, the Europeana initiative, continue in a better way. And I'm referring to the new initiative that you probably know of the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage. I don't know if you are familiar with this project. It's a big project which was launched, the call was in, I think, in 2022, and it was, the funds were allocated in 2024. But anyway, it's the idea that we need to create a new cloud for cultural heritage, so same as Europeana, collecting all the digital heritage, digitize and digital heritage together in a single platform, in a cloud, which, as you can see from the name, should be collaborative. So therefore should tackle in some way the problems that were found in the Europeana project. So this initiative of the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage was translated, of course, through a call for projects in the project EQUES, which is a European Cloud for Heritage Open Science, and Europeana is part of this project, okay? So basically, this new project, the idea of creating this shared platform to provide heritage professionals and researchers, but also the public, with scientific resources, but also training, so dealing again with the problem of costs, advanced digital tools tailored to their needs, is actually being implemented, and it's the first year is finished. It will last 5 years, also with a lot of cascading grants to cultural organizations for helping them, etc. And therefore, it is also tackling this, what we do after Europeana and how we can evolve with the Europeana project. What I would like to highlight here is that the approach is a little bit different compared to Europeana. First thing, because the governance structure of this project is putting together a lot of different entities. We have 51 partners involved, either as funding project leaders or affiliated entities, beneficiary entities, etc. Among them, there are also private companies outside the heritage sector, for example, Meta, okay? ATT and Meta. And also the idea that we need to have in this project really also a different approach, which enhances the collaboration and the different mechanism of participation of the different users. It is still at the beginning. As you know, I'm vice president of NCAT. NCAT is also one of the entities involved in the project, of the project partners. And the idea is really to build a new version of what the previous project was, but with a different approach, more interactive and maybe more efficient. We will see. Okay, I finished. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. I did not expect to have such a clear approach to what we all know, but everyone is used to be very skeptical about these large-scale projects. So everyone tries to benefit somehow. Maybe there will be then funding, and I can do my stuff. So that's how the reaction usually is. And then there is always this opinion that these projects are always too big to fail, and so everyone makes it then just a success because they have to. But your approach from accounting, I never got an introduction to this from that side, because usually you always have the lobbyism starting from the beginning, which might work out fine, but so. Thank you very much. So that's my spontaneous reaction. So the floor is open for question, comments. So
I see that there is also Anik. Anik, oh, Anik, how are you?
Hi, Elena. I wanted to be there. Sorry, because I'm in Venice, but I have another meeting in 10 minutes. So, but very interesting.
By the way, Anik is also in the EQUES project, right, Anik? With
I just had in this afternoon another meeting of EQUES. Yes, indeed, we are together.
So, we're working together, and she's also in charge of one of the first activities in September. So
yes,
so that's lots of communication with all these.
Yes. But well done, congratulations. Actually, I have a question, if I may. Yes. I was wondering if you could clarify a bit more, Elena, the role of IP. So in the business model, because now you touch upon the business model from a quite broad perspective, but what is the role of IP, and can it be part of the business model as an income and not only as a cost?
Well, of course, they can be part, I think, of a business model. I still haven't reflected really a lot about this, but I think if we understand that, if we look at the general perspective, they can be not just a cost, but really also a contribution that can reduce the costs. So I think yes, of course, it needs to be better investigated, because I was not really focusing on that. But yes, I agree with you that we can also look at that from that perspective and better maybe clarify the role in order to see what the real contribution could be in terms of business model. Thank you, Anik.
Thank you.
Do you have any?
Just a curiosity, just a detail. And in one of the final slides with all the green circles, possible advantages of joining Europeana. On the top left, one of the many things mentioned was copyright. So how is it possible to be helped with copyright, obtain copyright, if there are no costs covered by Europeana?
Say it again.
How is it possible to be helped in obtaining the copyright on manuscripts or artworks, for example?
Actually, Europeana, if I understood correctly, is based on idea of Creative Commons, right? So basically, yeah, you basically renounce to the copyrights. All the material is possible to be accessible for free.
Okay.
And this is the basis.
This is not help for me to obtain copyrights on artworks, for example, for which I don't have right on.
No. Basically, you renounce to your copyright and you make it available to everyone. So you basically everybody can access to it and can also use it, I think. So I'm not really an expert in copyright, but it's based really on this idea of open science and open research. So all the contents that are cultural contents from the different cultural collections, from the different partner organization adhering to a project are available for free. And that's why, you adhere to a project. There is no option. I don't think you can choose to make it available or to keep it just for yourself. So once you adhere to a project, you need to be aware of the fact that everybody can access it, basically.
Yeah, of course. That's one of those general criteria for any other platform, also for Wikipedia. If you want to publish your follow Wikipedia, you have to give up all the rights because it has to be shared with everybody else.
But I mean, for a private company, this is maybe a problem, right? Because I'm based my financial model on the fact that I have copyright. For a cultural organization with a mission like the one of cultural organization, to educate, preserve, with a mission of enhancing really cultural heritage, to me it's implicit that all of my heritage should be available to everyone for accessing, for studying, and for everything. So I think that's also promoting an idea that I really like, which is that culture should be for free and accessible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Stefan, please.
Thank you, Elena. It was really instructive, all your presentation. It really clarified me many other issues you anticipated in the previous conference. My concern stays at the follow-up, the future of Europeana. It will exist in the end, or will be absorbed by the new platform, because I'm also thinking about all the connection, all the information, also the familiarity we have and somehow with this platform, and we took so much effort to get in touch with this aggregator platform or whatever library. And then now we are realizing that it's going to disappear because it's the truth, probably. I will not be too pessimistic, but at least realistic would be the future of Europeana. And also, I want you to clarify a little bit the company, the private aspect of the new platform and the involvement of the company, how it would change the access and also the freedom of access of cultural heritage. And this is it something that you are taking into account or making your analysis?
Okay. So first question, the future of Europeana. This I cannot answer because I don't know. That Europeana is part of a project.
Yeah.
And so probably I think that nothing will be lost, to be honest. So it will probably incorporate it. So I don't know the answer to this. I know what my mentor, who died unfortunately almost 2 years ago, and who was working also on this reflection at the European level, he was in Brussels. He told me that it will be absorbed, probably. But I don't know actually what will happen. The important point for me is that Europeana is part of a new project. So if it's part, I guess nothing will be lost. I don't know how it will be reincorporated, but I really have no idea. I'm confident that nothing will be lost. Okay, so these are digital data that can be, of course, transferred from one platform to the other and I'm pretty confident nothing will be lost. I don't know if Nick has some more information, but I'm pretty sure that the idea is not to lose any data, not to lose any effort, because of course Europeana has been running since 2008, so a lot of data have been collected. A lot of data are going to be collected also in the future. So the involvement of private partners, I think it's beneficial in terms of dynamism. We have one of the representative of this, the HCC, the ECOS project. It's a European project, as all the others European projects. So it's a 5-year-long project. There are different work packages. It's a traditional project, I will say, to some extent. And of course, the private companies involved have also a role in the different work packages in relation to specific tasks. They are receiving some money, of course, some financial support for what they are doing, but I don't think that will really, hinder the process of opening the data and, changing this idea that it's based on an open science approach, in my opinion. And I think also the name of the project, which I completely forgot every time, but it's, it's European Cloud for Heritage Open Science. So I'm pretty confident that the idea is to keep everything open and not to lose or to block the access to this data to anyone. Of course, it's a project, and also Europeana was a project which was mainly also developed for researchers. So the idea is that really we provide advanced data for researchers. It's different from Google Arts and Culture, it's very spectacular, very funny to play with. My students love it. So it's completely different approach. This is for researchers. So it's also normal that the data are a little bit more complex to reach and to use. But still, I think it's based really on this idea of making everything accessible and make it really visible also for everyone.
Thank you. Peter, you have a question? Can you come maybe here so people at home can hear your...
Well, two questions, really. One question, both about money, really, which is, I didn't miss any way of making money. Is there... The funding seems to come from the European Union.
Yeah, that's the funding, yeah.
There are obviously ways that this could be monetized, that simply opening up to Google AdWords or something like that, there could be streams of income coming from that. So I wonder if that was the discussion that was happening in Europeana.
Actually, no. Every time I spoke to them at the different levels, there were no concern about monetizing that. Okay, but there are a concern that's raised is that some organizations didn't adhere to the Europeana project because that meant losing a source of income.
Right. Yeah, but I was wondering about that also.
Yeah. So there are 3,700, I think, organizations which adhere to the project. And they, for example, some of them decided to disclose, to put on Europeana just some type of data, because, of course, once it is available for free, it's a potential, how to say, no longer a source of income for your company, because if everyone can access for free, you cannot monetize it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's two different principles.
Yeah, but I can imagine the equation is if you did decide to monetize it, you might lose a large number of people who don't want to be part of something which is going to be making money. Well, my second question was related, which is it possible to put some kind of value on the services that Europeana provides in terms of how many people who are accessing it, what they are doing? Is it being used in education? Is it being used for tourism? And one can imagine all kinds of ways in which it is enriching people's lives. So is there a figure that you or is it, again, is it something that is it possible to make such a figure?
To make such a figure, you mean to have the number of, or to have an income on that?
Well, not particularly income, just what is the value to the community?
The value to the community. I think it's of course monitored. I don't have the data, but I can find it easily for you. Right. I think the value is how many people are reached on that and what type of satisfaction they are having from the interaction with the platform and with the data in general. It can be measured with different indicators, for example, or related to the training activities, to the different accesses to the platform, to the number of researches that are based on the platform. And I think they are doing some kind of monitoring, but I need to further investigate this so I can maybe provide you with better data. It was not a part of a discussion, to be honest, in the research, but I see your point. And I think it's also a point of reflection, in my opinion, also in terms of income. Because, for example, overtraining activities can be put also, as a paying service that you can implement apart from the free services. And So, but the funding for the Europeana are from the European Union. They are not coming from.
So I presume Europeana is keeping its own figures on how many access.
I think they have yes. I think they also make a report. I can share if you want. That will be interesting. It needs to be public to some extent because it's receiving funding. So it's.
And I couldn't. I was looking for some report like that, and I couldn't find one.
No, but I think it's possible to have it, or at least it should be made available if you ask. So it's.
Excellent.
All right, let's try.
Thank you.
I wonder, is the digital catalogs of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, that's also Europeana, I think so.
I don't remember all of them by heart, to be honest, but I probably.
Because
we need to check.
I'm a textual scholar, and I never accessed the Europeana platform because I was looking things up, but I think indirectly. Working on manuscripts from the Bibliothèque Nationale. I think they managed to, but it's not part of the actual Europeana platform. So it's a second way of using the data created inside the Europeana project, probably, and maybe they are presented in different ways.
This specific case, I don't know. Usually they are all in the platform. Of course, they are also stored at the aggregators level. But then they probably are stored also at the level of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. So it's probably on the free level. Yes. Europeana is the way it's accessible to all the public, but probably they have it also in there, I guess. They have it. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
About that. So it's hard to actually get an idea of user interaction if you have these contents disseminated in different architectures. So it's
in different infrastructure. I think you can monitor the one of the platform, of the real platform, but then of course the data can be accessed also through other means.
Which is absolutely crucial. So otherwise, to monopolize the presentation, of course, the access via one channel would be terrible. So I think, Peter, it doesn't make any sense. So any numbers can't be reliable if the content is provided through different platforms. So I would never engage with the data through the Europeana platform, but through the Bibliothèque Nationale platform. So all the textual scholars, manuscripts scholars would not be recorded in the numbers.
I think it is interesting to understand how many people access through the Europeana and how many through the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, for example, because you can see the value creation. Okay, so because if they access it through Europeana, it's more probably it's a diverse audience, like spread all over Europe, I suppose, or all over the world. Instead, if it's bibliothèque, probably they go there or they interact more closely probably with the bibliothèque. That's my opinion in terms of. But it's interesting to I think monitor the users that are using Europeana to understand also the composition of these users. So who are they? Are they researchers? So we are reaching the main public, or what are we doing?
I assume in my field it's not the researchers. So the researchers go straight to the platforms from the archives avoiding, because one critique I remember is that also the metadata, which is crucial for the research, is not as granular, not as rich as you would need it for your manuscript research, for example.
And this is a failure of a platform.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's
It
because
doesn't make really sense. So if the data is there, that would mean that data has been reduced or skipped for the presentation through Europeana, but on other platform it's more rich and more. There's more. I don't know. So
if it's a platform for researcher and a researcher tells me that the data are not so granular, not enough.
Yeah.
And the platform is for researcher, it means there's a problem, right? You are missing the main point of your creative. So it's a problem really of value creation. So one is the number, for example, of access. So you monitor how many people are accessing the data. And then the second criteria, the second indicator is the level of satisfaction. If we are not satisfied with the data, what are we talking about? I think that's my opinion. But it's interesting to see how it was created in 2008. We are in 2025, and after all these years, we still haven't found a solution.
Yeah.
So it means that the problem is really complex, in my opinion, and it thinks that we need really to think of different layers: managerial level, researcher level, and users level, to understand how to work together. Is this concept of open innovation, right? You need to involve all in order to co-create value, otherwise the value is not created. Just some reflections.
I discovered a lot of statistics.
You discovered all that? Okay.
One that's very interesting, the Creative Commons search. That this seems to be something that's very, very well supported. And these one is 500,000 people a month, they say.
Oh.
So this is because you can search for Rembrandt right across all the collections and see and find something you can't do because there is difficult for writing museum or will only allow you to search one place, but you can search all. So I can see what the point for them. It's also very interesting that to compare this to the Digital Public Library of America, or Pro, many other national initiatives of this kind. That would be very interesting.
No, absolutely. I think it's something, but maybe I can investigate. So thank you. That's great.
Something else for you to do. So.
Yeah. No, but that's interesting. And but the feedback you gave me, like it's not granular enough, that's really indicative to me.
So that's just what I think I heard, but I'm not even sure about this. So because I never looked really into Europeana, and but that also means it was never necessary for me to look at it, because someone said you will find it there. So I know to find the things elsewhere, but now I assume just so content that has been created and provided under the licenses and in formats that are then provided through other portals. I assume, otherwise, so, and it has to be this way, I think. And yeah, I have to look. So
I think it's.
I have one question. So I saw your background and your CV, and you are very well connected with all these associations and commissions. Your role in this infrastructural digitization activities is. Are you actively participating in policy making or in advising European Commission to issue certain calls, or are you just monitoring, and is this your field of research, so totally independent? Or because usually I always think that was so refreshing listening to you. It seems like you have a different standpoint, because otherwise people have always something at stake, so they follow their own agenda and try to squeeze this in, and sometimes that works very well. And that I like very much in your presentation, that you have this different, more independent way on. But I wonder how independent is your background? Because everyone has not. I mean, that's the way things are.
So I'm independent in terms of research. So I'm carrying out research independently.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm also participating in some, let's say, NGOs, like, for example, NCAT. Also, Anik is from NCAT, which is an NGO based in Brussels. It's I shared it. Oh, okay, so I no longer share it. But anyway, it's called European Network Cultural Management and Policy. It's based in Brussels. It is a permanent observer of the Council of Europe, and of course, it has links with UNESCO. So of course, they are all aligned. For example, now we are working on the fact of making culture visible in the Sustainable Development Goals. In 2025, we have this big conference, which is Mondia Cult, right? Mondia Cult is the biggest moment for advocating for the cultural sector. And I believe in this advocacy for the cultural sector, also in terms of, different actions. And that I'm, to some extent, lobbying, but not lobbying. Okay. So I'm providing my perspective, which is, of course, supporting some stance. But I consider myself independent when I do research. And that's why also I'm critical sometimes of the initiatives that have been.
Your input is really needed for these cases. It would be ridiculous to ignore the expertise of people who are looking at these processes from your.
And by the way, we are organizing the NCAT conference this year in Barcelona, 2 weeks before the Mondia Cult. And we are establishing focus groups on the different Mondia Cult themes to which you can contribute. So if you feel like, entering into this discussion and maybe providing some expert inputs, I think it would be something needed because you are independent, first thing. So, and it's also a perspective from researcher will be impacted by the actions developed. So if any of you feel like getting involved, I think it's interesting. Of course, we are researchers, first of all. So we see the potentialities and we see also, of course, the drawbacks and problems. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So that was very elucidating, and I'm glad we have this connection somehow. And
I really want to thank you. Really,
that was a very, very valuable input. And do we have to leave immediately, or so? Otherwise, usually you have an aperitivo here.
Aperitivo is always welcome.
Yeah, but you definitely should have one. So thank you, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Also online.